The mahogany conference table gleamed under the crystal chandelier as Uncle Harrison adjusted his Italian silk tie and called the quarterly family trust meeting to order. 23 relatives had gathered in his Park Avenue law office, each believing they were here to discuss the family's financial future. None of them suspected that their modest government employee cousin had been bankrolling their entire lifestyle for the past 4 years. "Before we begin," Harrison announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms, "I want to address the elephant in the room. Our family image is crucial for maintaining our social standing and business relationships." Cousin Victoria nodded enthusiastically from her seat near the window, her Hermes bag positioned strategically for maximum visibility. "Absolutely. We represent the Wellington name in society." I sat quietly in the corner chair they'd reluctantly provided, wearing my standard government-issued navy suit while surrounded by designer everything. At 31, I was the family's unofficial disappointment, the one who'd chosen public service over the profitable law careers, investment banking positions, and hedge fund partnerships that defined Wellington family success. "Which brings us to an uncomfortable topic," Harrison continued, his eyes finding me across the room. "Sarah's career choices have become problematic for family positioning." Aunt Constance shifted in her chair, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she gestured dismissively in my direction. "When people ask what Sarah does, we have to explain she works for the government. It's embarrassing." "She makes what, 40,000 a year?" Uncle Frederick chimed in, consulting the leather portfolio in front of him. "Hardly the image we want to project when we're courting major investors." I sipped my coffee and said nothing. The irony was exquisite. Frederick's major investors were largely mythical, his boutique investment firm existing primarily on paper and family money. My anonymous quarterly transfers had been keeping his Manhattan office lease current for 18 months. "Your government paycheck won't help the family image," Harrison declared, his tone suggesting the matter was settled. "We've decided that going forward, trust fund distributions will be limited to family members whose careers enhance our collective reputation." Victoria practically glowed with satisfaction. Her job as a gallery curator at a prestigious Upper East Side establishment sounded impressive at cocktail parties. Never mind that I'd been quietly covering her student loan payments and rent for her Tribeca apartment. "The trust exists to support Wellington family members who reflect our values of excellence and achievement," Harrison continued. "Those who choose lesser paths must understand there are consequences." Cousin Bradley, fresh from business school and still living off family money while developing his startup, nodded sagely. "It's about maintaining standards. Sarah's choices reflect poorly on all of us." I almost laughed. Bradley's startup was a food delivery app that had never delivered a single meal. His lifestyle of networking events and business plan competitions was funded entirely by monthly transfers I'd been making to his account under the name Wellington Family Development Fund. What none of them knew was that their modest government employee cousin served as deputy director of the Federal Reserve's International Banking Division. My actual salary was north of $400,000 annually, plus bonuses tied to global economic stability metrics. More importantly, my investment portfolio, built through careful analysis of international monetary policy I helped create, had grown to 8 figures over the past 5 years. "We're not trying to be cruel," Aunt Constance said with practiced sympathy. "But associations matter. When Harrison's clients see Sarah at family events, they assume we're all ordinary. Ordinary government workers," Uncle Frederick added with visible distaste. "It undermines everything we've built." The meeting progressed to the formal trust fund review. Harrison distributed leather-bound reports detailing each family member's contributions to the Wellington reputation and their corresponding financial allocations for the next quarter. "Victoria, your position at the Maxwell Gallery continues to provide excellent social connections. Approved for full quarterly distribution plus the art acquisition bonus." Victoria beamed, completely unaware that her art acquisition bonus came from my personal account, not the family trust that existed primarily in Harrison's imagination. "Bradley, your entrepreneurial pursuits show Wellington innovation. Full distribution approved, plus startup development funds." More money I'd been providing while they excluded me from their financial planning. The startup funds Bradley thought came from impressed family investors were actually my Fed Reserve bonus payments, redirected through offshore accounts to protect both my security clearance and their egos. Frederick, your investment firm's growth trajectory is impressive. Full distribution plus expansion capital approved. Frederick's firm managed exactly 3 client accounts, all belonging to family members, all funded with money I'd been quietly transferring for years. His growth trajectory existed solely in the quarterly reports he filed with the family, reports that bore no resemblance to his actual financial situation. Now regarding Sarah, Harrison said, his tone shifting to reluctant obligation. Given her career choice, the trust committee has decided that minimal distribution is appropriate. Enough to maintain basic needs, but not enough to encourage her current path. How generous, I murmured. We hope this motivates you to reconsider your career trajectory, Aunt Constance added. It's never too late to pursue something more suitable. Uncle Frederick consulted his notes. Perhaps law school? The Wellington name still carries weight in legal circles. They had no idea that legal circles knew the Wellington name primarily because of my work on international banking regulations that had prevented 2 major financial crises in the past 3 years. Federal judges consulted my policy recommendations. International law firms hired me as an expert witness on monetary policy cases. I appreciate the family's concern, I said carefully, but I'm quite satisfied with my career path. Sarah, be realistic, Victoria interjected. Government work is noble, but it's not going to provide the lifestyle our family requires. You'll never afford the kind of life we've always known. The kind of life I'd been funding for all of them. Victoria's gallery job paid barely enough to cover her monthly Metro card, never mind her luxury apartment and designer wardrobe. Harrison's phone rang and he answered with the self-importance of someone expecting crucial business calls. Wellington and Associates. Yes, I understand. No, that's not possible. There must be some mistake. His face paled as he listened to whoever was on the other end. The conversation continued in increasingly agitated whispers while the rest of the family exchanged confused glances. I'll call you back, Harrison said finally, ending the call with shaking hands. What's wrong? Aunt Constance asked. There's been some kind of banking error, Harrison said slowly. Our primary account. It appears several major transfers have been reversed. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it discreetly. Quarterly family support transfers cancelled as requested. All Wellington accounts will show reversals by end of business day. Personal financial management. What kind of transfers? Frederick asked, his voice tight with sudden concern. Large ones, Harrison admitted. The kind that have been keeping our various enterprises operational. I stood up calmly, smoothing my government-issue skirt. If you'll excuse me, I have a conference call with the European Central Bank in 20 minutes. Sarah, where are you going? Victoria asked. We haven't finished the meeting. Oh, I think we have, I said, reaching for my purse. You've made your position quite clear. The family doesn't need contributions from someone with my modest government salary. Wait, Bradley said, something like panic creeping into his voice. What did you mean about the European Central Bank? I paused at the door. Just work stuff. International monetary policy coordination. Nothing that would help the family image. Uncle Frederick's phone started ringing. Then Aunt Constance's. Then Victoria's. The sound of multiple phones buzzing filled Harrison's elegant office as bank notifications and payment reversals cascaded through their accounts. Revelation. By the time I reached the elevator, I could hear the chaos erupting behind me. Raised voices, confused questions, and the unmistakable sound of people discovering that their financial reality was far different from what they'd believed. My own phone rang as the elevator descended. Dr. Elizabeth Warren's chief economic advisor was calling about my recommendation for the upcoming banking reform legislation. I answered professionally, discussing federal interest rate policy while my family's world imploded 20 floors above. The call ended as I reached the lobby. Through the building's glass doors, I could see my driver waiting beside a black sedan. Not the government-issued vehicle my family would expect, but the private car service that came with my actual position. My phone buzzed with increasingly frantic text messages. Victoria. Sarah, my rent payment was rejected. Can you call me? Bradley. Some weird reversal thing happened to my startup account. Do you know anything about banking stuff? Frederick. Sarah, I need to speak with you urgently about a financial matter. I was about to leave when Harrison himself appeared in the lobby, having apparently run down 20 flights of stairs rather than wait for the elevator. His perfectly styled hair was disheveled, his silk tie askew. Sarah, wait, he gasped. We need to talk. About what? I asked pleasantly. These banking errors. They're all connected to accounts that have been receiving regular transfers. Large transfers. The bank says they originated from Federal Reserve executive accounts. How interesting, I replied. Harrison's face had gone pale. Sarah, who do you work for exactly? I told you. The government. But which part of the government? I smiled and handed him my business card, the one I'd never bothered sharing at family gatherings because they'd never asked about my actual job. His hands trembled as he read it. Deputy Director, International Banking Division, Federal Reserve System, he read aloud. Senior Policy Advisor to the Chair. Security clearance level. His voice trailed off. The banking reversals you're experiencing represent the termination of 4 years of anonymous family support, I explained calmly. Since my government paycheck apparently can't help the family image, I thought I'd redirect those funds to more appropriate causes. 4 years. Harrison's voice was barely a whisper. Victoria's rent, Bradley's startup funding, Frederick's office lease, your mortgage payments, Constance's medical bills. I've been covering the Wellington family's actual expenses while you all pretended to be financially successful. The lobby's marble floor seemed to shift beneath Harrison's feet. That's impossible. The trust fund has been largely fictional for years. Your law firm's been losing money since 2019. The family trust you've been distributing from? That was my money, filtered through offshore accounts to protect your dignity. Harrison sank onto one of the lobby's leather benches. The investors, the business deals. All funded with my Fed Reserve bonuses and investment returns. I've been the Wellington family's actual source of wealth while you excluded me from financial meetings for having an embarrassing government job. My driver approached discreetly. Ms. Wellington? The Federal Reserve Chairman's office called. The emergency banking session has been moved up. Thank you, James. I turned back to Harrison. I need to go prevent an international financial crisis. You know, government work. Resolution. 3 months later, I received a certified letter from Harrison's law firm, or rather from the bankruptcy attorney who'd taken over his affairs. The Park Avenue office was gone, along with Frederick's investment firm and Bradley's imaginary startup. Victoria had moved to Queens and taken a job at a community art center. The letter was a formal request for a meeting to discuss rebuilding family relationships and exploring potential financial arrangements. I filed it with the others. My assistant knocked on my Federal Reserve office door. Ms. Wellington? Your Uncle Harrison called again. He says it's urgent family business. What did you tell him? That you're in Geneva for the Global Banking Summit and unavailable for personal calls. Through my office window I could see the White House in the distance. Next week, I'd be briefing the president on cryptocurrency regulations that would affect global markets. The month after that, a climate finance summit in Tokyo where I'd help coordinate trillion-dollar international investments. The Wellington family name had indeed carried weight in legal and financial circles, because of my work on international monetary policy, not their imaginary business successes. Judges consulted my research. Investment banks recruited me. Central bankers from 12 countries had my direct number. My secure phone buzzed with a message from the IMF director. Your analysis on emerging market stability was brilliant. Can you lead the task force? I deleted Harrison's voicemail without listening and opened the IMF proposal. Real work required my attention. The kind that actually supported global economic stability rather than family delusions. My family had finally learned the difference between perceived success and actual competence. Unfortunately for them, the lesson had come too late to benefit from the distinction. 6 months later, the Wall Street Journal published a feature article about rising stars in international finance. My photo appeared above the headline, The Fed's Secret Weapon, How Sarah Wellington Prevented 3 Global Crises. The article detailed my role in stabilizing European markets, preventing a currency collapse in Southeast Asia, and designing the framework that saved the international banking system during the recent crisis. Victoria called that evening, the first family contact in months. I let it go to voicemail, then deleted it without listening. The Wellington name would indeed be remembered in financial circles, but for my achievements alone. They'd wanted family image management. Instead, they'd lost their only actual source of both money and reputation. Perfect consequences.